Let's look at how activity-based costing information can support activity-based management. There are three aspects of advocating activity-based costing system. The first is there's a high level of overheads relative to total costs. That means direct costs are in proportion less and the indirect costs are more. Second is the enterprise has diverse processes and outputs. Third is there's high level of competition, therefore accurate pricing becomes important. So when we come up with an activity-based costing system model, there are 5 aspects. The first is the indirect costs. They should be allocated into reasonably homogeneous indirect cost pools. For example, running machines. The machines are used for production, then machines become a resource. Second is there should be a causal connection between the cost of the resource, which is in this case the cost of machines, and the activities undertaken in operating the machine for the production. For example, running the machine. This connection is called the activity driver. So it's the running of the machine that's causing the cost. Third is this resource pool is then allocated to activities. So the way it's been done is we take the cost of the resource pool and then we look at how much activity has been undertaken so that we can come up with how much a given activity cost. That means 10 times it has to be done. When we do it once, how much it costs. Fourth is cost of the activities from this cost of activities pool are then assigned to the outputs. These outputs could be products. The outputs, fifth is outputs rely on these overhead activities for their production and for costing purposes, costing the overheads. So let's apply what we talked about now. So machine running is an overhead cost in this enterprise. So the homogeneous cost pool here are machines being run, and that's generating overhead costs. And the cost of running machines is 600,000. So that's the resource that's been consumed. And that 600,000 cost is for the estimated of 20,000 hours. Second is we need to now causally connect the activity undertaken to the cost of activities. So the cost of the activities in non-monetary terms is the total estimated machine run hours. So that's estimated as 20,000 hours. Third is to come up with a cost driver. That's a rate of the cost. So the way we come up with the rate is take the cost of the resource pool and then we divide by the cost of the activity. So in this instance, cost per machine hour is the rate $600,000 is the resource, $600,000 is the resource consumed. And that resource is consumed for running for 20,000 hours. So for every hour that the machine is run, costs $30. Now this $30 is an overhead cost. We now look at the fourth. We look at the output. And for the output here is the toy. We ask the question, how much activity is required to produce a toy? How much machine hours are required to produce a toy? It's 1,500 hours. So for that 1,500 hours, the fifth is to assign the overhead cost for the toy, and that costs $30 per hour, and the overhead cost assigned is $45,000. So that's one activity is producing toys. There could be several other activities which are overhead related activities, and we have taken one activity to demonstrate. In activity-based costing, because we have these homogeneous cost pools of activities, these different activities are calculated this way, how much it costs towards the overhead contribution, and then we assign these overheads to the output. In this instance, it's producing toys. Now let's look at traditional costing. And this toy is made in a department, toy making department. And in that functional department, the overhead cost is $2 million. Compare that with the machine cost pool of making toys, $600,000. Because toys are made in this department, the machine hours are same, 20,000 hours. So the predetermined overhead rate under the traditional costing is a single driver here. We take the total overhead cost of the functional department of $2 million and we divide that by the machine hours, 20,000. And the overhead rate is $100 per machine hour. And the machine hours used to making a toy is 1,500. So the overhead cost allocated now is 100 into 1,500 hours, $150,000. Compare that with activity-based costing, where we are specific about the machine that's been used and the cost of running that machine and the overhead that's generated by that machine. And that's $30 per rate, 1,500 hours, same hours, $45,000. So we can see there is a difference between the traditional costing analysis and the activity-based costing analysis. Overhead costs under the traditional costing is 150 grand, whereas under the activity-based costing is 45 grand. But the activity-based costing is far more accurate and specific, because looking precisely at the relevant activities that are relevant to producing toys, whereas here the total overheads here is in addition to producing the toys. This 2 million could include other overheads, administrative overheads, overheads that are not related to producing toys. Now that we know how much overheads are incurred, we can now cost the toy. So the direct material costs do not change under the traditional and the activity-based costing. Direct materials, direct labor, they are same. But the indirect costs, overhead costs allocated under the traditional costing and activity-based costing differ. Therefore, the total costs also differ. So under the traditional costs, the cost per toy equals total cost is 250,000, and let's say 200,000 toys are made, and cost per toy is $25. But under the activity-based costing, it's $145,000. Number of toys made is 200,000. Cost per toy is 72.5 cents. So that makes a difference in the costing of the toys, and hence would drive the selling prices. So when we compare the traditional costing versus activity-based costing, what we can understand is that the overhead base under the traditional costing is functional or department based, whereas under the activity-based costing, it's activity-based. The overhead rate under the traditional is a single rate, whereas under the activity-based costing, it could be multiple. In this illustration, we have taken only one activity, but in making a toy, there could be several different activities conducted, and they are indirectly related to making toys. They are the overheads of producing a toy. So here are some examples of different activities conducted. Purchasing materials. What drives that cost are the pieces of material. Let's say overhead costs for that resource pool, cost pool is 100,000, and estimated number of units made is 50,000. Then the rate is $2 per piece. The second activity related to this production output is machine setup, and the resource pool, cost pool, is 400,000 for that setup, for 200 setups, and per setup is $2,000. Inspection is driven by number of hours. Cost pool is 100,000, and that 100,000 is for 1,000 inspection hours. Per inspection hour costs $100. Running a machine is the number of machine hours. The cost pool is 300,000, for running a machine, and it's estimated 10,000 machine hours for that cost pool, $30 per machine hour of running a machine. So we can see that total overhead cost is 900,000, and that's been caused by 4 different activities. And these 4 different activities have 4 different rates because their causality is different. So let's say these activities are undertaken, the same activities are undertaken to produce a computer monitor and a keyboard. The consumption of resources are different. Let's take the first one, materials. $2 per piece. My monitor requires 5,000 pieces, $10,000 cost. Keyboard requires 1,000 pieces, $2,000 cost. Second, machine setups. It's a batch level, $2,000 per setup. Monitor requires 10 setup, $20,000. Keyboard requires 2 setup, $4,000. Inspection third, $100 per inspection. It's a batch level activity. Monitor requires 10 inspections, $1,000. And keyboard requires 20 inspections, $2,000. Running a machine, it's a unit level activity, $30 per machine hour. Monitor requires 400 hours, $12,000. Keyboard requires 100 hours, $4,000. Now we can add up the overhead cost for the monitor. Total overhead cost is $40,000, and the number of items produced estimated as 100. Overhead cost per item is $430. And we can take the keyboard. Total overhead is $12,000, and for that is to produce 100 keyboards. Overhead cost per keyboard is $120. So the direct materials and direct labor, their direct cost in making a monitor, the 10 kilograms of plastic for direct material at $2 is $20. But for keyboard, 5 kilograms of plastic, $2, $10. Direct labor, 2 hours at $25, $50 for monitor, and 1 hour is required for keyboard at $20. It's a lower level skill, $20. And we calculated the overhead costs. For the monitor is $430, and for the keyboard is $120. So the total cost for the monitor is $500, and keyboard is $150. Here our overheads based on activity base comprise several activities where we calculated the overhead costs separately and then added up to come up with this overhead cost for each production item, monitor and keyboard.